How about you now? This here's Redneck Wizard coming back at you with another Learn It video. My buddy Eric Reisner, the DIY dad, he's got him a sick puppy here. Old Blue Maple, she's been puking some Earl out the rear end there. He called me over today to help him diagnose the issue. I got me a good hunch of what it is, but we're gonna go ahead and take this sucker apart and we're gonna look at it and figure it out, get the parts. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna do it ourselves. So he was driving down the road and he heard a noise that wasn't normal for this old rattle box here. And when he got home, he parked it, came back out a little while later, and he noticed all of this. You can see she's draining down on the rims, down on these badass tires, and then down onto his driveway, leaving these Earl spots. Now, we don't really care about Earl spots, well, because that's how our driveways look growing up, but we do care about Blue Maple and we want to get her fixed up right. And so I got a hankering suspicion that the seal in there is done shit to bed, and so we're gonna fix her up. So taking a closer look at this thing, we can tell why the seal failed. The bearings are bad. You shouldn't have any play like that. And I'm not messing with the drum here. Yeah, the drum moves on the axle here, but grabbing the axle, we shouldn't have any kind of play like that. And that's why that wobbling around in the bearings has wallered out that seal, and that's why she leaks. So we're gonna pull this apart and we'll show you. So we're done pulled the tar off, as you can see. We're about to pull the drum for these here brake drums. In the future, he's gonna do a disc brake conversion, but for now, we stuck with these drums. So sometimes, if you have a little problem with the drum, you can give it a little tap, 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 tap-a-roo on the top and the bottom and the side there, and she'll work her way off. But
let me get my rubber mallet.
Yeah, we're gonna rubber mallet it. We'll be right back.
I don't know.
We're gonna get that WD-40 it. Oh yeah. Next thing we're gonna do is pop this here diff cover off. She might be a little stubborn mule.
Well, there goes that.
It wouldn't be right if we didn't have Earl everywhere.
And make a little bit of a mess, yeah.
Yeah. Now see, there should have been a lot more diff Earl than what came out.
Which means a lot of it came out on the highway.
Yes sir, you barely made it. So one thing you want to check while you got the pumpkin open, that's what I like to call it, a pumpkin. But I'll go ahead and get politically correct here, the differential. Now that you got this open here, one of the things you want to check for is you're going to have to dip your hands in here in the nasty. And you're going to feel a magnet down there. And what you're going to look for is metal shavings. You're going to see fine little metal shavings. The fine ones are fine. The big ones ain't so fine. So if you got big chunks of metal in there, you got bigger problems. Alright, so the next thing we got to do is we got to spin this here drive shaft until we can see the other end of that pin to be able to take it out. So now that we spun our differential around to where we can access this pin, it's held in place by this bolt right here. And what that is a 5/16. We're gonna use our 5/16 wrench. We're gonna put it on here. Now, for TV, I done broke it loose, but you're just gonna give it a little break loose, and then we're gonna yank this sunbuck out. So I got that bolt, and we're gonna spin her on out. And what that is, that's just a pin that holds this bigger yander pin in place. And what I did there, I just took a magnet, gave her a little slippity slop, slid her on out. Obviously I don't want to ding that up, so I'm going to set it on a rag there. And then our next step is we want to be able to access a little C-clip in here. And that C-clip is hidden inside this planetary gear inside your differential. So what we got to do is we got to push in on the axle just ever so slightly. It's actually a little bit more than slightly, it's about a 1/4 inch. But we're going to push it in a little bit, and what that'll do is that'll expose that C-clip and allow me to pull it on out. Alright, oh, Eric's pushing in on the axle. He just pushed it in enough, and there she went. She was facing yander way in there, so when he pushed on that axle just enough, she slipped down and fell. Alright, so that's the C-clip that holds your whole axle in, and as you can see there, the axle will just slip on out now. And then the next step is replacing the bearings and the seal. So now that the C-clip is off the planetary gear, you should be able to just pull the axle right on out of the splines. Well, you can see right there, them bearings are not so good because they ain't supposed to fall apart.
Wow.
Like that.
Yeah, the bearings are actually falling out. So I think we found the problem, which is what you said whenever you were shaking it around and moving it around, the bearings were no good.
Yeah, you shouldn't have that much play in an axle, and so it's a good thing you got new bearings when you went and got the seal. It's best to just replace them all at the same time. You're already this far into taking it apart, you might as well go ahead and replace them bearings at the same time. It's one more step, but it's one more step that's worth it. These are not supposed to fall out of the bearing set, so you can see just how far these are gone. But I mean, the truck does have 200 and something thousand miles on it. They're you know, they're original to the truck. It's time. All right, so feeling in here behind the bearings, I pulled out a good old booger. That's all.
There's some metal shavings all in there?
Yep, that's all metal shavings from these bearings, just collecting in that earl.
So now, when I was going down the road and heard that noise and all that stuff, could that have seized up? What's the worst thing could have happened?
Well, worst case scenario, well, not really worst case scenario. I mean, there's worse things that could happen, but had it been a long trip and all your earl came out of here, then those bearings would have heated up so bad that eventually they would have seized, and then your axle would have just been rubbing metal on metal, and you would have seen a lot of smoke coming out. So you might
possibly catch fire and all that?
Yes. Had you just been oblivious to it all and you were rolling down the road and didn't see all that smoke, yeah, it would have caught fire. It would have caught all this. I mean, this is earl after all, so it would have.
Well, I did notice a different sound. I was about 10 miles from home.
And what you heard was that axle, with every bump, you heard that axle rattling, just like at the start of the video. We were able to move that axle up and down. With every bump, you heard that, and it reverberated all the way through the truck, through all the metal parts. And so that's the sound you heard, and it's a good thing you did, because it alerted you to the fact that, hey, something just wasn't right. And you see now what wasn't right. They make a nice little specialty tool called a seal puller. Turns out your truck came with one. Just use that axle, slip it on back behind there, and I mean,
we're replacing it, so it doesn't matter if we tear it up.
Yeah, I'm not trying to save that seal at all. So it got it started. And this one was a little bit worse for the wear than most of them. Usually you can just pull the seal on out that way, but you can see this guy is just kind of all torn up. So we're just going to go ahead and, that's a part of the bearing, but we're just going to go ahead and collapse this seal in on itself and pull it out with a pair of pliers. So now I'm just going to collapse the seal in. And there she is. That's your seal. And you can see all I did is collapse down on itself so I could get the screwdriver behind it. Give a little Yankee yank. Now the part I was worried about taking the longest to get out, well,
that's what's left of it.
that's part of it. There's the race that's in there that still has to come out. So we'll have to get the pull hammer on that race to get that out, but all the bearings are out. Alright, so now we're ready to pull this race out of here that all the bearings came out of. It's what's left of the bearing set. So what I've got here is some rented from local AutoZone slide hammer and a bearing puller set that goes on the slide hammer. So I'm going to show you how we're putting that in there. What I've got is I just picked the one out of the three that best fits the inside diameter of here, but will not push in past that bearing. So now what I've done is back this nut off to where you can get her in there. Just push it in like that. Make sure that the top and bottom catch on the inside of that race. So then what I'm doing here is adjust this nut and this washer all the way up against the front side of the race so that when I push in on the slide hammer, it doesn't slide in and come out on me. There's the race. There's where she came out of. Not good. We got our new bearing set here, all the way from Sheena. I'm just going to slide them in now. It's going to go in easy right there because that's part of the seal. But then I'm going to take a wood block, and yes, I realize this is not the best wood block, but again, we at the DIY dad's house, and well, he don't have a lot of scrap wood around. So I've put that bearing set in about flush, about as far as that wood piece is going to let me, and then taking the old bearings here, the old race anyway, and I'm going to use it to go ahead and tap my bearings in the rest of the way. And you can see they're moving. Alright, so we got the bearing seated all the way in, and you can see that they are nice and spinny like. So we're good to go on that, and now we're ready to put the seal in. You got to be real careful putting the seal in because it can get crushed. So it may be a slow go, but I'm gonna just tap-a-roo on that. And I'm just gonna go till she's nice and flush. That's flush for all y'all that don't speak redneck. She feels good. Next step, stab at axle. Alright, we're gonna line them splines up inside the planetary gear. And so it's all about smooth stroking it. Now you want to try and keep it pretty well centered. You're going to feel a little resistance, especially if you don't have it lined up right. And then once you get to the planetary gear, if you're doing it by yourself, you're going to want to go nice and slow. Feel when you get those splines lined up so you don't knock that planetary gear out. If you've got a buddy helping, he can stick a hand in there and possibly lose a nub. Yeah. But she's stabbed in there. You can see ain't no more play. She's ready to go. I'm gonna put the C-clip back on it, secure this axle. All right, we've got our axles slid back in. Push them in all the way as far as they'll go. Put the C-clips back on the ends. Then pull the axles back towards the outside. That's gonna recess that C-clip back into that planetary gear so that it can't fall out. Next thing, I'm gonna put my pin back in. What this right here does is, one, it's the pin that the other planetary gears revolve around, but it also keeps those axle ends from squeezing in and letting those C-clips fall out. So this piece right here is pretty daggum essential. So I'll put that back in, lined up the bolt here, and I'm just gonna tighten this back up. All right, that's tight. We're done back here, aside from putting the differential cover back on, putting the brake drums back on, wheels and tires back on, and then we're going to fill her up with 3 quarts of 90 weight differential gear oil. We're going to drive it around for about 1,000 miles, maybe less, maybe 500, and then we're going to make sure that we put probably another quart in there, because what it's going to do is it's going to fill these axle tubes up. All that oil is going to slosh around in there, and it's going to fill those up, and it's actually going to drop the level that's in here in the differential. So after about 500 miles, my buddy here is going to check it, fill it as needed. So before you put the differential cover back on, one of the most important steps is make sure you put your gasket sealant all the way around it. Just put your bead all the way. I go around each hole. Make sure you do that. That way your hard work isn't for naught. Well, project complete. 2 bearings and seals. And the ass end old blue maple here, ready to go.